To introduce the co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, my good friend from Pennsylvania, Brian Fitzpatrick.
Governor Hogan, again, on behalf of all of us, thank you for your hospitality, for UME's hospitality. Your staff is just awesome. Everybody should know that. The governor has an amazing staff who did a lot of good work. Josh had mentioned the Democrat members of our caucus. On the GOP side, we have Representatives Katko, Rice, Upton, Gonzalez Colon, Herrera Butler, Valadeo, and Taylor. And as Josh had stated, we're taking a very structured approach here. Number one is defining infrastructure. Number two is coming up with an overall cost that we are all comfortable with, but that needs to be driven by what we need for each individual bucket of infrastructure. And that needs to be driven by facts and data and evidence and experts, not pulling numbers out of the sky, but actually coming up with the numbers that we need. What is the number we need for broadband? What is the number we need for roads and bridges? And have that drive the ultimate outcome. And lastly is how to pay for it. And the reality is, we have to come up with a bipartisan solution, which means nobody's going to get everything they want. We'd rather, as we always say, get 80% of something than 100% of nothing. I want to thank Senator Manchin for doing what he always does, which is inject a whole lot of common sense into the thought process and the solution. We need more of that. And again, Governor Hogan, thank you for everything you did for us. And this is a beginning. This is not the end. We got a lot of work to do, but we made a lot of good progress. There was a lot of really good cross-pollination. As Senator Manchin said, just spending time with each other and hearing each other think is very helpful. Thanks, Governor.
Well, thank you very much. I know a number of the members of Congress have got to leave to fly back to their districts. Some people got tight schedules, but we'll be happy to take a couple of questions before folks have to roll out. If anybody has any. Never seen such quiet, folks. Well, sure. I'll let maybe one of the problem solvers in Congress jump up here in a second to answer what's the next step. As several of the speakers said, this really is an important first step, and it's a very unusual thing, really, when you have governors, senators, and congressmen from both parties sitting down and having real discussions. It doesn't happen very often. I can't remember it happening. And so that's the first step, and agreeing on some general principles about what infrastructure is and what it isn't, about the size and scope, and about the fact that it has to be bipartisan. But there's a lot more work to be done. We didn't solve all the problems of exactly what it's going to cost and how we're going to pay for it. But, we've just come up with a set of principles. And, we're going to continue to provide input from the National Governors Association. We're going to work with all of our leaders in Congress, but really it's in their court for the House and the Senate to figure this out. So maybe Senator Manchin and maybe one of the problem solvers, leaders from the House would want to talk.
Give us an example of some of Maryland's needs.
Yeah, we did talk a lot about, I gave the examples in Maryland about how we've been able to both utilize federal dollars and our state funds along with private sector investment, that by, building the largest P3 transit project in North America with federal, state, and local dollars and private sector investment. For our traffic relief plan, which is the biggest one in North America. We're utilizing private dollars, but it's a balanced approach. We have 800 projects currently under construction in Maryland, totaling $9 billion, and that only happens with help from the federal government, state and local governments all working together. So with that, we'll turn it over to maybe Senator Manchin.
Let me just first of all make sure you all know who all was here from the Senate. Anyway, we had Senator Cornyn here from Texas. We had Senator Collins from Maine. We had Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, Senator Rosen from Nevada, Senator Romney from Utah, and Senator Young from Indiana. The thing this allowed us to do is basically talk to the people on the front line. Being a former governor, that I know that whatever happened in Washington, we had to implement it, or live with it, or try to make some adjustments, or ask for waivers to make it fit in our scheme of things that we needed. We can prevent that from happening if we start coordinating what we're doing. So in the Senate, we have a working group. We have 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. We call it the G20 group. And we meet consistently. And we have the problem solvers with Josh and Brian coming over, working with us. So we're working in a bipartisan, bicameral way to have the executive branch of the governors, the NGA, involved truly completes that triangle. It helps us have good input so we don't have redundancies or waste. And that's really what we're achieving and trying to achieve and set a way forward. And I think that today was a tremendous start for that. Josh?
I think you covered it. I mean, I think our whole goal here is to work together, not just Democrats and Republicans, but working with the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, as we do, and we did on this past winter and going to the new year on the COVID package. And that's the model, right? This is the model on how you govern, not just on this issue, but frankly on every issue. Working together across the aisle and across chambers and working with our governors and with our mayors and our local communities. That's how you actually get things done, and it's how you bring the country together.
Any other questions? Maybe a couple more.
Can you talk a little bit about how this proposal or these conversations would correlate with some of the plans that you want to see implemented in Maryland, specifically in Baltimore and some of the communities that we need? We've heard the need for public transit. And how do you see this federal partnership working with the private sector to make that happen?
Well, so we've invested more money in the city of Baltimore in transportation than any other jurisdiction in the state. We continue to do that. That's thanks to the help of the federal government. We're also building the largest P3 transit system in America in the Washington metropolitan area and Prince George's and Montgomery counties. And it really is a great partnership at the federal, state, and local level, and in some cases with the private sector as well. And we couldn't do it without them. And that's why this summit is so important. It's why I decided to convene this. You know, I am a national co-chair of No Labels. I've had the opportunity to work with both the bicameral, with these senators who really want to find compromise, with the problem solvers in the House. And, you know, I led a year-long infrastructure initiative through the NGA with my fellow governors, Governor Northam, and all 50 governors really came together on a set of principles. And so if we can find bipartisan compromise in Congress on this, I think it's something that would be applauded by all the governors and would certainly help us here in Maryland.
Do you envision actually having a plan at some point to present to congressional leadership and President Biden?
Well, we presented the NGA plan already to talked to President Biden about this in the Oval Office. We presented it to Secretary Buttigieg. I testified before the Senate. And we submitted that to all the folks here. That's the NGA's proposals, a lot of which I think that there's agreement among all the governors, and I think most of the folks here that those are good principles. Both the folks in the Senate on both sides, and Senator Cassidy was unfortunately had to leave right before this, but he and Senator Manchin and their colleagues weighed in with some great stuff in the Senate that I think we agree with, and the problem solvers they're rolling out their plan today from the House. And so, we don't have a detailed plan today. We have a set of principles we all agree on, but I think we're going to get there. This is the first step in the process.
Let me say one thing, and I think I think where you're going with this and wanting to know, the president put out a conceptual plan. It's not a bill's not been written, but it's conceptual, $2.25 trillion. You've seen that. It's not only infrastructure, which we think is conventional infrastructure, but human infrastructure. We believe that we should take step by step. So we're going to do infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, this is what we have come to understand, that what we think the greatest need we have now that can be done in a bipartisan way is conventional infrastructure. Whether it's the water, sewer, roads, bridges, internet, things that we know that need to be repaired, be fixed, and basically the deferred maintenance has been going on for far too long. We can move into those other areas also. Now, whether there will be as much of a cooperation on that as there is on this. So why don't you take the greatest need that we have and do it on something that we all agree on? That's what we've come to an agreement on, I think, more than anything else today.
Last question, please.
Wait, Brian's going to jump in.
Yeah, and I wanted to offer an additional GOP perspective on it. I just want to emphasize, so we have, as the problem solvers, we are on the House side, 58 members. We have 29 Democrats and 29 Republicans. We have a caucus rule that if 75% of us agree to a concept, or in this case, an infrastructure framework, we as a 58-member centrist bloc in the House agree to together get behind it, and we have that framework now. So the question now's the hard part. Now that we have the framework, we got to start doing those three buckets, as Josh and I talked about. We got to come up with the number that we need, and then figure out how to raise the revenue or close the gaps in order to cover that, because we want to be responsible about it. If infrastructure is done the right way, it is an investment. It's not an expense. If done the right way, we got to figure out what that right way is. And it takes a lot of work to come up with the numbers And the scope, it doesn't happen in a day or a week. It's going to take a lot of work to get there. But if done the right way and we make smart investments, it will yield a return for us rather than being an expense.
Now, last question, please.
I think the congresswoman should say something, because if the congresswomen are united, we're all united.
Yeah, we can take one last question, but to follow up on that point that Congressman Fitzpatrick just talked about, you know, this is a serious thing when you have 58 centrist members of Congress willing to work together and willing to vote in a block. I don't have to tell you that, you know, they're going to have to work with the folks in the Problem Solvers Caucus. You know, with Joe Manchin saying he wants to work together with all of us in the Senate. You know, with the tight majorities we have, never has it been more important for us to work together in a bipartisan way, and I think we all have agreement that that's what we want to do. Mackenzie.
Two questions and one last question.
I don't know. We'll see.
The timing of this, can you explain from the members of Congress the timing of implementation? You talked about President Biden has a concept for this infrastructure plan, but where do you see the introduction of real bills and voting on this? And can you explain the timeline of the realistic expectations of this plan moving forward?
The bottom line is that's happening as we speak. We're starting to form that right now. You saw the Republican plan came out. Okay, we're working in the G20, which is the 10 Ds and 10 Rs, who are more inclined to do something on a infrastructure only. So we'll take the Republican, the Democrats. If let's say the Democrat leadership takes the 2.25 conceptual, puts that into a bill. Usually you find roadblocks there, the same as we did last December when we couldn't get past $500 billion for the new COVID package from the Republicans, 1.3 from the Democrats. We got together and broke that roadblock and came up with $908 billion. I envision maybe the same thing happening, but I think the White House is receptive to us for them to understand that we really truly believe that we should do a conventional infrastructure bill that can be done bipartisan. They have an appetite to want to do something bipartisan. This is doable. The other things that are conceptual we can work on, piece by piece, committee by committee. And the only thing I would say on that, in the Senate, the way we work, it has to get back to a committee process to where these bills should go to the committee, they should have hearings, markups, come back to the Senate floor with an open amendment process, which is germane to the subject matter. When you do that, everybody has input, and it brings people together because they get all of their concerns and frustrations out through a voting process, not through a dialogue against each other.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, before we leave, I just want to say that as important as infrastructure is for our country, it may be the second most important thing that we did over the last 24 hours. We are Democrats and Republicans, we are governors, we are senators, we are House members, we are men and women who believe in something more than our parties, and that is about the country. All of us concerned about the direction, but all of us committed to doing what the Governor and First Lady did for us last night, which is host us at a table. And we broke bread, we broke common ground, we got to know each other, we shared our life stories, and through that lens, we achieved a lot in the matter of just a few hours. And I just don't want that to be lost in this press conference, because it is possible, it is important, it is necessary, and it can't be legislated. Every single person in our country can take that same step that the Governor and First Lady did last night and bring people together. The results and the fruits of that labor are surely delicious. So thank you, everybody.